So what is the visibility center of a polygon? So the idea is we want to guard a polygon, but there have been cutbacks, so we can only afford one single guard. But sensors are really cheap. So we've got sensors all over the place, and the guard has to choose one position to station themselves at. And then when a sensor goes off, for example, a sensor goes off here at point 2, then the guard has to travel to see that sensor, okay? And the goal is to minimize the travel that the guard does. So the guard would go and see it and then go back to their armchair where they have their laptop and are surfing the net in between the alarms. So that's the story. And to be a little bit more formal, we'd say the distance to visibility from a point X to a point P is the minimum distance in the polygon that you have to travel from point X to somewhere that sees the point P. So we call that distance to visibility. It's asymmetric, of course, right? And then the visibility center of a polygon is a point C that minimizes the maximum you would ever have to travel from C to see some point in the polygon. So please feel free to ask questions along the way. So we're going to look at another example. The first thing I want to point out is that it's enough to just look at the vertices of P. We don't have to look at all the points of P. And the reason is that if I were imagining maybe putting my guard here at this point, it's not the true center, but let's imagine for now, and an alarm comes from the point P, well, then the shortest path to actually go all the way to P would be this one. And the last reflex vertex on that path is R here. But if you instead considered the point P that's the neighbor of R, oh, sorry. So if C has to see the point P, then it's enough for it to travel and meet this line, right? But now if we consider that bottom corner, C would have to travel further to get to that and see that bottom vertex. In other words, distance to visibility from C to P is bounded by the distance from C to the vertex V. So it's enough to pay attention to those vertices. And in fact, even more special, these are vertices that are adjacent to reflex corners of the polygon, right? So that's all that we need to get to with our guard. So now if we think about where is the visibility center of this particular polygon.
May I ask a question just to clarify?
Yeah.
The original, in the original statement, you want to reach you want to be able to eventually reach a point that sees an arbitrary point in the polygon, right? So it's not like you have a pre-specified set of points that you need to see.
No, so I'm going to consider the version also where we have a pre-specified set of points. But at the moment, I'm just imagining we want to be able to see any point of the polygon. And for that, I'm saying that it's in fact discrete. It's just the vertices that we want to see to define the center. Yeah. So for these points, if like for this point, we were extending this line, right? So for all of these points, they're adjacent to some reflex vertex, and I would extend those lines, and those define half polygons. Like here, I have the half polygon up above here. And if I contemplated putting the center down here, it would have to travel at least to that half polygon. So that's a way that we can think of this problem. If I imagine trying to put the center here, then my route to see each of these points would be like this. And it's clear that I should move that center point more to the right. And in fact, here would be the true center for this polygon. And I've marked the three sort of furthest routes that the guard would have to make to see various vertices of this polygon. The line that extended this one has vanished because that's a closer one. So it's not one of the furthest distances that the center point has to travel. So then a way to think about this problem is to think of adding all of these. So here I've extended this line, but also here is a vertex adjacent to this reflex corner, I would extend this line. In other words, I have one of these wedges at each of the reflex vertices of the polygon. And I have to be able to reach all of those wedges. And so the idea then is going to be that we will find the geodesic center of a linear number of wedges inside the polygon. So I'll make that a little more formal, but if anyone wants to ask more about that right now, it's still slightly fuzzy.
I have a question.
Yeah. Sure.
So if you go back to the other slide.
This one or before that? This one.
This one, yeah. So that center, is that like the geodesic disk is tangent to those three rays?
Yeah. So long as you're, this path bends here, so that you're talking the geodesic disk.
Yeah, the geodesic disk. So you're looking for a point which is sort of like the geodesic disk is the smallest one that's tangent to those three, something like that? Or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then tangent might be that the closest point to reach is at the end of the segment, rather than with this 90-degree, meeting it at 90 degrees, right?
Okay.
That's the only thing. Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, so then Boris was asking, what if we have a selected set of points in the polygon? We're going to think about that too. So in this case, I have only 5 points in the polygon where sensors might be located. And I want the visibility center of those 5 points. So this is a picture of the center, and the extreme points are 0.5, for which I have to reach this red line in order to see it from the point C. 0.3, I have to reach this line or this half polygon here, and 0.1, I have to reach this half polygon here. Okay, so now I'm restricting the points that I have to see to being in my finite set U. So we're going to look at this problem as well. And the idea here is going to be similar, which is, this is not the efficient way to do it, but this is a way to think of what's the equivalent definition, is that from each of these points, I could extend lines to the reflex vertices of the polygon and go a little further and say, oh, that defines a half polygon. And if I contemplated putting the center down here somewhere, I would have to reach that half polygon in order to see the 0.4. So I've drawn some of these half polygons here, not all of them, but in general, we would be getting number of points, which is m times the number of reflex vertices, that many of these half polygons, which is more than we want, right? But that's one way to think of this problem. So now I've talked about sort of reducing this visibility question to the geodesic center of half polygons, but what exactly do I mean by that? So I have a polygon and I'm told some set of half polygons, like this one means this half polygon, right? Here I have this little half polygon. And I want to find the geodesic center of those half polygons. So for that, what I mean is that the distance from a point to some half polygon is the geodesic distance. So when I say D, I'm talking geodesic distance always. And then the geodesic center is a point C that gives me the minimum of the maximum distance from that point to any of the half polygons. Yeah, so any question about that, that statement of the problem? Okay, and here would be the center of this particular example. From here, I can get to this one with a lesser distance than these three. So these are the 3 extreme ones. Similarly, I can reach this one with a lesser distance. Okay, so these are the 2 problems we're going to look at to find the visibility center either of a whole polygon, or its vertices, or of some fixed set of points in the polygon. And we're going to reduce that to, but then discuss on its own merits, this problem of finding the geodesic center of some set of half polygons inside a polygon, which is this picture here. Okay, so center problems. Wow, there is so much literature on center problems, right? Sylvester in 1857 with this weird title, A Question in the Geometry of Situation, was asking to find the center of a set of points in the plane. And we all know that Megiddo's algorithm will do that in linear time. And also that this center point is going to be a vertex of the farthest Voronoi diagram, which can be found in n log n time. So Voronoi diagrams, farthest Voronoi diagrams come into play here as well. I'll talk about that. Now we were trying to reach all the half polygons, which is sort of like reaching line segments inside a polygon. So it's worth thinking, well, in the Euclidean plane, what happens if you want the farthest Voronoi diagram or the center of a set of line segments? And Ohrenhammer et al., they point out that this problem has been a little bit sort of neglected compared to furthest Voronoi diagrams of points. And so what we're really considering is we have line segments, but furthermore, we're inside a polygon with geodesic distances. So that has been entirely neglected to my knowledge. So to talk a little more about background, the geodesic center of a polygon. So now I'm just talking background and there's no visibility involved, right? So I'm asking for a point in the polygon such that I can get to every point in the polygon, and I want to minimize the maximum distance that I might have to go. So that will be a point of the geodesic farthest Voronoi diagram. For example, this region in that diagram consists of all the points whose furthest vertex is this one, the tail of this little bird, right? So what is known about geodesic center of a polygon or about farthest Voronoi diagrams of a polygon? It was 1989 when Pollock, Scherer, and Rothe gave an n log n time algorithm for that. And that came after a sequence of papers with higher runtimes. So this was quite a breakthrough result and relied on lots of Megiddo's various prune and search type ideas. And I'll show you some of the details later because our method is going to follow that approach. Now in 2016, this was reduced to linear time, and that's an amazing result. It relies, first of all, on Hirschberger and Surrey, who used a kind of matrix search to find for every vertex, what is the furthest vertex in the polygon. And then they also used epsilon net techniques. So it's using quite powerful techniques to achieve this order n runtime. Now, as far as Voronoi diagrams, Boris et al. In '93 gave an n log n time algorithm to find the farthest geodesic Voronoi diagram of the vertices of a polygon. And also, if you're considering a set of points inside the polygon rather than the vertices, some given set of points, this was the running time they achieved there. And there's been various papers trying to improve that. I think for the vertices of a polygon, the best that's known is this one in a paper by O and Barba and Ahn. And in various subsets of these three author sets, they've considered the case where you have a set of points, whether those points are on the boundary or not, various variations. But the best runtime for that is an upcoming sausage paper that achieves this runtime. So this, in case the points that you wish to reach are the vertices, you're still getting an n log n out of this algorithm, right? So this is why I think this is the best known for the complete geodesic Voronoi diagram. So that was various background. And let me also mention, because we're doing visibility, not just geodesic farthest something, related visibility problems. So one would be the Watchman problem. So again, here we have a single guard that has to see the whole polygon, but does it by walking on some route. We want this route to be the shortest possible. And for every point in the polygon, there's a point on this route where the guard would see that point in the polygon. So there's also a huge amount of work on this. I think the latest greatest runtime is like n cubed for this. I know when Anurag and I talked to Joe Mitchell about this problem. That was his first idea, is that somehow the Watchman tour could be used to solve the visibility center. But the runtime for the Watchman is kind of high, and we hope to do better than that. So related, but we're not going to actually use anything like this. Now, there's also work, which is very relevant, on the shortest path to visibility. So this is this distance measure that I was talking about. And if we're given a polygon and a fixed point S, and we aim to handle queries that say, here's some point, the sensor has gone off there, my guard has to walk to see that sensor, what is the shortest route that the guard should walk to see it? It'll reach an edge of the visibility polygon of Q, which is what's shaded in gray here. And that problem was introduced in 2005. That's where this picture is coming from. And Arkin et al. Gave a linear time and space pre-processing and log-n queries to handle these. The main part of their paper, the harder part, was they were solving for polygons with holes with a larger runtime. But it's this, this simpler version that we would certainly need at the end of our, after we've found the sensor and we want the center, and we want to say, well, how does the guard move from the center to see some point, then we need this routine in order to do that. Okay, so our result on this then is that the visibility center of some points in a polygon can be found in this input size, log of input size time. And if we wanted the visibility center of the whole polygon, we're getting n log n. Well, that just follows from this, but in fact, it's simpler if we want the visibility center of the whole polygon. So just a repeat of that picture I had. And here's the outline of how we're going to do this. We're going to reduce the visibility center to a half polygon center. So we're going to find a set of half polygons of size order n and do it within our time bound, such that the visibility center of those points is the geodesic center of the half polygons. And then we're going to solve separately this problem on its own, find the geodesic center of any set of half polygons. And we're going to follow the Pollock technique for doing that. So is there any question about what this statement is saying then? Joe, yes, please. Hi.
Hi, Anna. I arrived late, so this is actually not related to what you're just showing now, but what is the generic degree of the geodesic center? Is it 3 like it has been in all your drawings?
Yeah, but it can degenerate to 2, right? If you're on a point that's sort of midway between, say, 2 parallel half polygons, then it could be 2. Yeah, so I'm leaving out what happens in sort of degenerate situations and how to handle them, but the generic thing is 3. Yeah. Anything else?
Thanks.
Yeah. Okay, so let's look at this first. How do I reduce to a linear sized set of half polygons? We were seeing how to do that in the case where I want the visibility center of the whole polygon, because it's just 2 half polygons at each reflex vertex of the original polygon. But if I had, oh, and one thing I should say is that we do need ray shooting to find the endpoints of these windows of visibility. So we're looking at the n log n runtime right there. Now, in the more general situation, the thing you might think of first is, well, I have certain points. I don't care about all the vertices. Let me take the geodesic convex hull, which is this thing colored in gray, and now just you know, do this trick on the geodesic convex hull. So I would say, oh, here's a point I want. It's adjacent to a reflex vertex, so I would extend that ray. My point 3 is adjacent to a reflex vertex of the original polygon, and I would extend that ray, and so on. Now, in this particular example, I do get the 3 half polygons that are the critical ones for determining the center point C. So this idea seems to work in this example. It doesn't work in general. And here's our example. So I have just 4 points, and I would like to have the visibility center of those 4 points. And this is the visibility center here. I travel from this point, just this little blue distance to see this guy. I traveled the same blue distance to see U1 and the same distance to see this one, right? So what matters to me are these 3 half polygons here. But if you think about that plan I was proposing, we take the geodesic convex hull, it's here in gray, and there's nothing that tells me I should take the line from U1 to R1. R1 is not even part of that geodesic convex hull. So we do need to do something more to find our set of half polygons. And the fix is not that hard. Well, we need to prove it works, but describing what it is easy enough. Proving it works is something else. So we're going to start off with the half polygons determined by the geodesic convex hull. So in this case, these 2, right? And then I'm going to find their geodesic center. So I'm appealing to the second half of the algorithm right here. And I would find, for example, this center, which is actually visible to all of the 2 half polygons that I've got, right? This is another degenerate case, Joe, where it's not even determined by 2. It's just like star-shaped with respect to the half polygons.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm going to repeat now with my original set together with the set C0. So I'm going to expand my geodesic convex hull to now include the point C0. And now I do have this reflex vertex coming into play and U1 coming into play, and I will discover this half polygon that I need. Okay, but I still have a linear number of these half polygons. And I can find them with 2 appeals to finding the geodesic center, the geodesic convex hull, plus an appeal to finding the geodesic center, which I'm going to show you. Okay, so that's the plan for this first step here. I didn't prove to you that it works. Maybe if I step back for just a sec, sort of the intuition is that if I have fewer of the half polygons than I really should have, then the center is sort of pulled in that direction, and it's going to catch for me anything that I've missed. That's a, you know, sort of the 1 sentence intuition for why this should work. Okay, so then the next step is I have a set of half polygons. They're of linear size if I'm coming from the visibility problem. And I'm going to follow the Pollock approach to find the center of a set of half polygons. So here's my problem again. And one important thing to note, so I'm assuming that each half polygon is given by a chord, and I have both the endpoints of the chord. I will have used my ray shooting out of the visibility problem to have found those endpoints. Now, if I have a half polygon like this that has within it a smaller one, I don't need this one, right? Because, you know, yeah, I have to travel to reach this, but I have to travel to reach this smaller half polygon, and so the bigger one is irrelevant. So I'm going to throw out everything except my minimal half polygons, and that'll be important later on. So we're going to follow the approach of Pollock et al. So what do? They first design something called a chord oracle, which decides where is the geodesic center relative to a given chord. So you tell it a chord, and it's going to say, is the geodesic center in this half or in that half? And we're going to query the chord oracle with many such chords K. The geodesic center might also be on K, so that's 1/3 alternative answer that might be given. Now, after they've designed this chord oracle, I'll talk about how in a sec, but after they've designed it, then here's their algorithm. They triangulate the polygon, so like from the vertices, the linear number of triangles, and use the chord oracle to isolate which of the triangles is going to contain the center. Okay. then inside that triangle, we still have maybe very complicated different combinatorial paths to reach all the half polygons. So they refine that triangle to a smaller region where the paths are all combinatorially the same. That is, for any two different points inside R, if I look, what do the paths to a particular half polygon look like? It's the same regardless of where I start inside R. And then they end up with a Euclidean center problem, which Megiddo has solved. So that's the outline. And we'll look first at how to design this chord oracle for our situation. Okay, so given a chord K, we want to know which side has the geodesic center. The idea is to find the relative geodesic center, which means I'm going to restrict the center to lie on the chord K and ask what's the best position if I have to live on the chord K. So in a situation like this, oh, and I'm also going to find the starts of those three tight paths that determine the center. In a situation like this, I've discovered that this center on the chord K is in fact the center for the whole polygon, because there's no half plane that contains these three rays. There's no way I can wiggle from that point to improve things, essentially. On the other hand, in a situation like here, my three rays are all contained in a half plane, and the perpendicular to that half plane, I should move in that direction to improve, to decrease my three tight distances here. So in this case, we know that the true center is going to lie on this upper side of the chord K. So what this is saying then is that it's enough to be able to find the relative geodesic center on the chord K and the directions to its furthest half polygon. Okay, so how do they do that? Excuse me. The idea is the following. They have their chord going from point A to point B. And the first step is they find shortest paths from these two endpoints to all the sites. In our case, to all the half polygons. In Pollack et al.'s case, originally it was just to the vertices, but we're doing half polygons. So, and I haven't drawn all the shortest paths to everywhere. I've only drawn two of them, to the shortest paths to H1 here. But now we're going to think about what are the distances from points along the chord to that half polygon, and when are they combinatorially different? So if I have I've extended here the segments of the shortest path trees, right? And if X lies within this interval I1, then what is my shortest path to the half polygon H1? Well, I need to travel to V1. So I have the Euclidean distance from X to V1 plus some constant that captures what's the length I have to travel after that. It's all the same whether X moves around in here. That last part of the journey is all the same. So this is a very nice function. It depends on a Euclidean distance plus a constant. And similarly, if I were in this interval, what's my shortest path to the half polygon H1? Well, I have the Euclidean distance to V2 plus some constant to take care of the rest of the path. Now, in our situation, unlike Pollack et al., we also have intervals like this, where I need just to travel in a straight line to my half polygon. And that's actually an even simpler function because it doesn't involve a constant. It's just the distance from the point in this interval to the half polygon. Again, a nice function. Now, at first, you might think, well, I've got little h number of half polygons, and each one is splintering into these potentially n different intervals. So I have n times h of these intervals, each with a nice function in it. And what am I caring about in terms of that, those functions? For any point x, I worry about the maximum of all of these functions. In other words, I'm looking at the upper envelope of these functions. And I want the point x that minimizes that. So that, to keep in sight what our problem is. Now, what Pollock et al. Show is that, in fact, we don't need to worry about this quadratic number of intervals and functions. There's a linear number that suffice. And that's about shortest path trees. And the intuition, anyway, is that if I were thinking, for example, about this half polygon H3, I have the same intervals down here, right? Because the path has the same combinatorics near the end. And so my distance would be, distance to V1 plus a constant representing the rest of the path. But my path to H1 is further. So somehow from V1, I really only care about what's the furthest thing I can get to. And so H3 becomes irrelevant. And really the number of these intervals somehow depends really only on the number of edges of the shortest path tree. So that's the intuition as to why we have only a linear number of these functions that matter. Now, so we have some number of these functions, a linear number of them. I want like the upper envelope and a point that minimizes that upper envelope. So what do Pollock et al. Do? They're using Megiddo's prune and search for this. So in linear time, they're going to cut in half the number of these functions that they're dealing with and repeat that. And that altogether is going to give us our linear time. And before I wrap that up and say that, the one thing I should add about our situation is that we need the shortest paths to the half polygons. And I felt that that should be there somewhere in the literature, but we haven't found it. And the idea is this, that I will start with the shortest paths from my point A to all my endpoints. And then I will, search for each of my half polygons. What's my shortest path to it? It's going to land in some sort of funnel of the shortest path tree. And I'm going to find them in order. So the fact that I can find them in order, it's crucial that these half polygons are all minimal ones. Nothing is contained in anything else. So that's the heart of what's making shortest paths work out okay. All right, so with that, this is how we're going to implement that chord oracle in linear time. And then I'd like to tell you just a tiny bit. This will be a short talk. I'd like to tell you a little bit about how the remaining steps work out here. So we triangulate the polygon. We're going to use the chord oracle, like find one chord of the triangulation that splits things roughly in half, apply the chord oracle there, tells me where I'm going. So I can isolate myself into one triangle of the triangulation. And that's going to take me my input size log n. Now I want to refine that to a smaller region. That's my next step. So to do that, it's sort of like the picture I was showing you before on the chord. I'm going to find shortest paths again and extend those backwards into the triangle now, instead of just onto the chord. And this divides the triangle into regions. For example, if you look in this region, my shortest paths to each of the half polygons are combinatorially the same. For example, to get to this one, I always just go straight down. To get to this one, I always have to go through this vertex now, right? To get to this one, from here, I always go to this vertex and follow that edge. So inside each of these regions, my paths to the half polygons are combinatorially the same. And we now want to identify which of those regions. And again, we're using the chord oracle to do that. In this case, applying the chord oracle, we will still need the input size, log of input size, in order to do that, because we're not cutting down the set of functions the way we were before. Okay, so then the final step is within that region where I know the paths are combinatorially the same. How do I go about finding the center? And this becomes a Euclidean center problem. Let me show you why. If you remember, what we were saying here is that from here, I just need to know Euclidean distance to this point plus a constant. And I need to know Euclidean distance to this line and distance to this point. So what it becomes is I have certain disks. These are representing the constants in my functions, certain disks and certain lines. And I would like to find the smallest disk that contains my input disks and touches or contains the lines. And that is a problem that, again, Megiddo or like extensions by Bhattacharya et al. To handle the case of lines will solve that in actually linear time for this very last step. Not that it matters because we've used n log n so many times. Okay. So that's the outline of what we're doing in this last step. And we are getting n log n time for the half polygons, the order n of them that came out from the visibility problem, or I have n plus h log of n plus h in the general case when I have little h possible half polygons. So can we find the visibility center in linear time? Well, I said that we can find the geodesic center of a polygon, not we, but An et al. Can find the geodesic center of a half polygon in linear time. And can we do it for the visibility center? That seems like really hard because almost at every step of this algorithm I was telling you, we were needing the extra log factor. Even the ray shooting to find the ends of the rays of the windows. Extra log n factor to find the geodesic convex hull of points. We were using it everywhere. But how about that second problem? Find the geodesic center of some half polygons in linear time. That seems more promising because at least our ray shooting is out of the way. Our geodesic convex hull is out of the way. And this seems hard still as well. But what about when the half polygons are in fact the edges of the polygon? So I'm asking to find the geodesic center of the edges of a polygon. And for that, we have some very good ideas. So that's work in progress in Anurag's thesis. And then, of course, you might say, well, I told you how Voronoi diagrams were really strongly related to finding the center. Couldn't we go further and find the farthest Voronoi diagram, either for the visibility center in n log n time, or maybe for all the half polygons? And this is another case where I guess farthest in this case is somewhat neglected. If you think of the nearest Voronoi diagram of the edges of a polygon, that's the medial axis, right? Like that's done to death, linear time and everything. And here we're asking a similar thing, but for farthest, the farthest Voronoi diagram of the edges of a polygon.
Mm.
So we're working on that as well. Yeah, so again, joint work with Anurag, part of his PhD thesis. And I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you, Anna.
Oops.
And
No,
if anyone has questions, please speak up.
I have a question. Anna?
Yeah.
So when you were using all those n log n things, it really seemed like it was related to the number of reflex vertices. So is it obviously n log r everywhere, where r is the number of reflex vertices, or do you actually need the log n for the number of vertices?
That's a good point. I would have to think through all these steps to.
Because most of them, it always felt like you were just shooting a ray through a reflex vertex. So somehow it seemed like it might be sensitive more to the number of reflex vertices as opposed to the number of vertices in the polygon.
Yeah, so I guess in particular, you're saying the number of half polygons we would get for the visibility thing is right. Proportional to R, the number of reflex vertices. Absolutely. Yeah. Now, I think, yeah, but so this H would be R instead here.
Right.
But I think the rest of the N still stays there. but
Uh,
yeah. Yeah, it's worth thinking about. Thank you. That's a great idea.
Yeah, and if you have the polygons, if you have convex chains of the polygons, so that you have R convex chains, perhaps you can you can treat those convex chains as units that don't have to be processed vertex by vertex somehow.
Yeah.
Hand waving,
That
hand
would be-
waving.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. That was John, yes? Or who?
That's right.
Who said that? Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much.
So have you thought anything about polygons with holes?
No. we leave that to you, Esty, please.
Can you
No.
say anything special about the rectilinear polygons?
Oh, rectilinear polygons. That would be a nice special case to look at, wouldn't
So
it?
that was actually a special case that we were talking about when I visited. So I think the orthogonal case is going to be even easier. And there you may be able to get linear time using perhaps some of the Watchman ideas, because there we have linear time Watchman root too.
Aha, yeah. Yeah. Excellent ideas.
The other question would be about weights, so from your motivation of, sensors go off every so often, some of these may be more prone to go off than others. And so you might
Yes.
want to minimize the expected distance. So that would be like
Oh,
weights on the points. Not all of the points, the sensors are of the same importance.
Right. You want to be able to get to the Mona Lisa faster than to something
Exactly.
else.
okay. Yeah, that's an
Yeah.
excellent idea too. So that's sort of a different use of weights. Like I have seen the geodesic center of a polygon with weights that are sort of like the Voronoi weights, the additive weights, but this is a different use of weights, but more
This would be
relevant.
multiplicative weights, I assume.
Um,
But I think for your problem, I could also think of maybe it's not realistic, an additive weight interpretation where once you see the sensor, depending on which sensor it is, it will take you some time to process it. In different way, sensors require different processing, and that naturally produces the additive weight version of
Right,
the problem,
right.
I think.
that would be nice too. Yeah. Yeah. Mhm.
If this isn't complicated enough.
Yeah.
You consider the sum of the geodesic lengths of geodesic paths. This is NP hard, I assume, but maybe to obtain a good approximation for that.
So
Yeah, that would be-
minimizing the sum instead of the max, you mean?
Yeah, sum instead of the.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that makes it a Fermat-Weber-like problem.
Right.
Yeah.
Oops.
Yeah.
Well, I'm saying it's probably NP hard, but maybe one can obtain a good approximation.
Yep. Okay, so I guess I should keep Anurag working on this thesis for a long time to come.
I have a question.
Yes.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay. If you were looking for the shortest times in, say, the space station, where you have a three-dimensional galaxy to worry about with lots of sensors, is that a focused question or is it an obvious generalization?
I think that will take another PhD student, not Anurag. No, so I think 3D would be extremely interesting, but that's a whole nother thing. Yeah. I don't even know what's known in 3D about like the geodesic center of a polyhedron. Like vertices.
I think you have to be extremely careful because in 3D, once the space is not convex, there are some very silly looking problems like shortest paths become hard.
Yes.
in various
Yeah.
ways. So
Yeah.
I mean,
I
never
think-
mind shortest path to a complicated thing. Just a point-to-point shortest path becomes
Yeah,
difficult. So.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And,
it's
oh,
really-
sorry, I'm seeing there's a couple of questions in the chat as well, which I wasn't looking at before. Alon, so here it's enough to see any point of the edge. For the half polygons, yes, right? Because if you reach those windows, then you have a straight line of sight to the point you wish to see.
Was referring to the work that you described as in progress, that
Oh.
instead of seeing a point, it's enough to see the edge. So, I mean, the edge is seen if any
Oh,
point.
I was imagining reaching the edge, not seeing the edge. So I was not
see.
thinking of visibility to the edges, but rather a version of the half polygons where each half polygon is almost empty on one side. It only has the edge on that side. You see what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And the other question in the chat is, have you considered what happens if there's a second guard? No, but that problem in the plane for points in the plane has been looked at. So there's some body of work that one could see what of it could be extended.
Thank you for that nice talk, Anna. Yeah, could there be some interesting extremal problems here? For example, can you show that that the visibility radius must be less than a quarter for any polygon of perimeter 1?
Interesting. I don't know. I mean, surely it's possible to show something. But, in the case of geodesic center, and so when people are concerned with the geodesic diameter, and I'm not sure that that exactly makes sense here. But having some extremal, some promise of what range there is for this visibility radius, that could be interesting. Yeah, Peter.
Couldn't you make it sort of arbitrarily close to the radius? I mean, you could take a circle and put tiny little hooks on it so that your
Yeah.
half polygons are essentially, the radius of the circle away. So I'm not sure that.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, or just a U shape with a very, very long bottom and very short sides.
Yes.
Yeah, I was thinking of just a polygonal curve with almost no area. That would get you radius a quarter. I think that's more than Joe's circle would do if you put spikes on the circle. Yeah, just a thought.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, thank you all for the great questions and suggestions.
Thanks again for the talk.
Welcome.